So today I wanted to talk about what I consider the top 6 tools that you'll need to work on your sewing machine. So if you're like me and you want to work on your own sewing machines, I've got 6 tools here that I think will help you accomplish that endeavor with more success. So here I've got laid out 6 different tools or tool sets that I think will help you work on your own sewing machine. This is not everything that you're going to need, but these are some of the tools that I find myself going to over and over on all the different jobs that I've done. These are some tools that help the job be enjoyable, help you get the job done without damaging your machine, and help set yourself up for success. If you want to get any of these tools, I've got links down in the description. I haven't been paid by any of these manufacturers. These are all tools that I've bought. These are all tools that I use. I've bought a lot of tools I don't like. These are tools that I have bought, used, and like, and I'm just sharing my personal experience with you. So let me clear this off and we'll talk about each one of the 6 tools individually. So let me start off with this magnifying headset. I like this style because I wear glasses, so I prefer the type that wears like a hat, and so that's why I prefer this style over the ones that wear like glasses themselves. It has an adjustable band on it so you can make it bigger or smaller to fit your head. There's an adjustment here that you can tighten it up so that you can swing this up out of the way when you're not using it and swing it back down. So the magnification in this particular headset is 1.75. I find that is a good magnification. The distance from the hood to your work is a comfortable distance. So in other words, you don't have to get your face real close to your work. At this distance with the 1.75, they advertise a 14-inch focal distance. And so I found that to be comfortable to wear and use for several hours at a time. This item here, this extra loop, this is an additional accessory. And I like the loop. It swings down. It multiplies the magnification of the 1.75, so this will magnify pretty close, and I can look very closely at the tip of a hook. I can look at the shank of a needle, and in some cases I can even read the writing on the shanks of those needles, which it's really small. I find myself using this loop. I can swing it up out of the way. I can swing the entire hood up out of the way, just go to normal vision. So I've got 3 options there while wearing this. I can not look through it. I can swing it down and just look through the one magnification. And then if I want to get really close, I can swing that loop down and get really close. Now, whenever you are using the loop, you have to hold either your face down to the machine rather closely. We're probably in the 2 to 3 inch area now. Or you'll have to bring whatever you're wanting to look up close to your face. This hood comes in different magnifications. There's 2 different choices. If you follow the link, you'll be able to see the 2 choices when you check out. If you decide to get this loop, you'll have to buy that separately. There's also a link for that.
Please give this video a thumbs up.
Let's talk about these screwdrivers. These are made by Weha. They're made in Germany. As far as little screwdrivers go, these do carry a price tag, which is more than what you can find. But I've had a lot of different sets of small screwdrivers. But what I found was with all those cheaper ones is the tips just would not accomplish the task that they are presumably made to do. So I've had these Weha screwdrivers now for years, and so I've done a lot of jobs with these, and the tips have held up very well. Even the biggest sewing machines have some very small screws. So you're going to need to get the right size screwdriver in order to successfully adjust those screws, remove those screws, insert those screws. These are very small parts. You need the proper tools, and care needs to be taken so as to not lose the items or damage them. If you try to use the wrong size screwdriver, you're going to damage your screws and you're not going to get the job done. So it's doubly frustrating. I highly recommend these Weha screwdrivers. Get you some and then you'll be able to make some adjustments on those screws. I think you'll be happy with them. So let's talk about this set. This is a ratchet. It will tighten in two different directions, or I should say it'll tighten in one direction and loosen in the other. So you can install and remove screws with this. There's sometimes when you're working under the arm of a sewing machine or there's just not room to get a screwdriver onto a screw. This just gives you a way to get a driver onto a screw and have that driver squarely into the head of the screw so that it doesn't slip. So my A number 1 bit is this bit right here. It's just a straight bit. I use all of these some. I've even used some of these sockets, but typically I use this straight screwdriver. And so what's nice is basically you've got a really short screwdriver here, and also you have a nice amount of leverage that you can apply to that. You can hold force down easily and turn that screw. Some of these screws are in there pretty good, and so it's nice to have this extra amount of leverage that you don't get with the little stubby screwdriver that you can just get your fingers on. And I don't have one of those stubby screwdrivers, but if I did, I would be holding the handle like this, and you can see that my hand needs to be in the same area that I couldn't get a screwdriver in otherwise, right? So with those stubby screwdrivers, you kind of need to have your hand over them in order to get torque on them. And as we've discussed, the reason you're using this one is because you don't have a lot of room above the screw. So to get your hand in over it, you didn't have room for the screwdriver, you're not going to have room for your hand. So in those situations, that's what this is really good for. You can get on the screw and you can apply the correct torque into a driver that is firmly placed into the screw so that you can get it broke free without damaging it. This one seems to be fairly well made, given that it does have some plastic in the ratchet and it doesn't have any sort of high grade steel or anything in it. But I have used this for quite a few years and I haven't had any issues with it. You just don't put that much force on a ratchet this small, so it seems to be holding up well. The tips, I haven't worn any of these tips out or sockets. They are holding up well for me. It's not a cheap set, it's not an expensive set, but I do think that it has a good value, and so I can recommend it. So there's a lot of screwdrivers that are needed to work on your sewing machine, and after having recommended all these screwdrivers that are very small, have small tips, and can get into very tight places, it might seem counterintuitive that I would recommend such a large screwdriver. So this screwdriver, while it is long, the shaft on it is 10 inches. So from the tip to the bottom of the handle, that's 10 inches. The tip is not a very large tip, so there's a lot of different tip sizes. In order to get just the right tip and to find one that I could recommend to you, I bought several screwdrivers. I've owned a screwdriver that I used. That company has gone out of business, and so it took me a while to find this screwdriver, and I'm mainly recommending this straight screwdriver. This comes as a set. There's a Phillips, and it's a good one, but with sewing machines I found that typically they're straight slotted screws. But this particular screwdriver has the size head that I recommend, and it has the length of shaft that I recommend. Also, the shaft on this screwdriver is round, and so it can be up against something and still turn. If it has a big square shaft, that makes them stronger, but also it's bump, 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 bump every time if the shaft is up against something. And the way I'm going to show you how I use these, this shaft does get against the head of the machine, and so it's important that it's smooth and round. So let me show you how this screwdriver can be helpful when you're working on an industrial sewing machine. So I'll start with a small screwdriver. Now this is of the set that I've recommended, and this screwdriver really the tip's a little small, but what I wanted to show you was if you have a smaller screwdriver, if you're having trouble getting onto a screw, you might think that if you go to a smaller screwdriver you'll be able to get in there. And I can get this screwdriver in there, but you can see that to get the screwdriver vertical on the screw so that the tip won't slip when I go to twist it, well, it doesn't really leave me a way to get my hand around it. And in order to get my hand around it, then I'm leaning that screwdriver out too much, and that's what's going to cause it to slip. So when I start to turn, it's not going to be in line with the screw, and so the machine is really keeping me from getting my hand on the handle, even though I can get that screwdriver in there. This setup can be used to overcome that. So you can see that because it's so short, it's underneath the head here, and I can stay on the screw, and I can get this screw out real easy with this ratchet. But another way that's kind of interesting and something that I use a lot, and that's this longer screwdriver. So where that small one, the handle would be up against the head, with this large one. Okay, so now the shaft of the screwdriver is just kind of up against the head of the machine, but now my hand is up here where I can grab the handle and leave the screwdriver vertical so that it gets a good bite into the screw head. And now when I turn this screwdriver, because it has this round smooth shaft, it's not going to be banging up my sewing machine head, right? So I can turn that, and so that works real well, right? This is a real good way to get to it also. There are some times when you just have to go to this. You don't always get that situation where you can just sneak in by with the long screwdriver, and so in those cases that's when I'll move to this one. I'd rather use a standard screwdriver to remove my screws. It's faster and easier for me, but in those cases where I just can't get a screwdriver on it because of the head, then I'll go and I'll use this. This is very effective, but it's slower, and so if I can avoid using it, that's what I will. Anyway, it's nice to have options. There's more than one way to get a screw out successfully. This isn't necessarily about maintenance. There are small screws, and so sometimes these will come in handy for going and picking up those screws, or sometimes getting the screw inserted into the hole that it's going to be installed in. This can be helpful for holding that in place while you get a screwdriver to then get it started. But what I use this for more than anything is threading machines, especially with overlock machines that have loopers and a lot of guides to go through in tight quarters. But just threading home sewing machines, industrial sewing machines, I use these a lot. It just gives me a level of accuracy to get that thread through small holes, guides, and I just find it makes the whole threading process a little quicker, a little more accurate, a little more enjoyable. Now this is an area where I think the amount of money that I spent on these tweezers really pays for itself. I have cheaper tweezers. Those are somewhat frustrating when you're dealing with really small parts, so the tips don't come together really closely and accurately. And also, if you're trying to grab a thread, cheap tweezers just don't align well at the tips, and so you can bring your tweezers together and they don't really grab the thread. They kind of miss somehow. These are a good size. I don't have small hands, and so this is big enough for my hands, but yet it's not too big. So they're just a good size. I like the crook on the end, the offset tips. These are made by Nipex. That's a good company. These are high-grade tweezers. These tweezers have made all my other tweezers obsolete. So now I just use these. I've used these a lot. I recommend these. The hood I recommend, you can get hoods that have lights on them, and I've tried some of those. The optics just weren't where I wanted them to be. So sometimes I need a light. Now I've got a lot of light in my shop. Even with all the light I have, I still find that I need a small flashlight to be able to get into a small access doorway. So when you're working in through a small hole, the ambient light of the room just doesn't seem to get in there. So you just drop a flashlight in there, you're going to be able to see what you want to see. It's small, it's made out of metal, it could stand a drop every once in a while. It takes just over-the-counter batteries, which I like that. This flashlight is not real bright. It's bright. I find that when I'm working closely with something, especially when I have magnifiers on my face, that a really bright light just blinds me. When you're working really close, you don't need that bright of a light. And so this light is a nice level of brightness, and it has a simple on and off. I don't need to send Morse code, and I don't need a lot of modes with my flashlights, and I find that if I have to click through 5 different modes every single time I want to use a flashlight, I find that kind of frustrating. It's a decent quality, simple on and off, not too bright. It's a good flashlight, so get you a little flashlight. If not this one, just any cheap flashlight will work.
Thanks a lot for watching my video. Please consider becoming a subscriber.